Okay, so as we've talked about in previous sessions, we'll see the same video for each chapter during each part, but we'll look at it with a different lens each time. So we're going to review this same video that we saw for Partie 1, and we're going to look at it with the lens of the vocabulary and the grammar points that we would want to focus on for Partie 2, or the second part of the chapter. So let's go ahead. You can see I've turned on my closed captioning in French, and we'll go ahead and play the video. So again, here we see the person that we've become familiar with, Claire, who's going into some type of facility.
Ah, Claire, tu es déjà arrivée? Oui. Quelle heure est-il? 14h45 à peu près. Ça va, toi? Oui, très bien. Qu'est-ce qu'il y a? Ma mère. Elle n'est pas... Non, non, pas du tout. C'est que... Bon, tu le sais. Elle mange, elle joue aux cartes, elle lit et elle dort.
So we've seen here, as we discussed last week, that here the friend has noticed that there's something going on with Claire, and that's why she says, Qu'est-ce qu'il y a? And Claire says, C'est ma mère, or my mother. And she says, it's sort of the same problem that's been going on. And we can see here in the context of Partie 2, as far as having habitual activities, like on page 44. Of course, Claire's mother's situation is a little bit different, but she's listing things that she's going to do every day. So, elle mange, she eats. Elle joue aux cartes, she plays cards. Elle lit, she reads. And elle dort, she sleeps. So if we look on page 44, we kind of get that same context of things that people do on a habitual basis, and that applies to students as well. You normally have a time for classes and a time for studying, things like that.
Elle mange, elle joue aux cartes, elle lit et elle dort. Elle existe, c'est tout. C'est trop triste. Et les hallucinations? Elle a des moments de lucidité, mais... Tu sais, Abia, ça fait plus de 6 ans qu'elle s'est fait interner. Oui, mais elle s'est fait interner volontairement, n'est-ce pas?
So here she's talking about, we can see that she says, c'est trop triste. So that's very sad, or it's too sad. And if we look on page 48, we can see that word trop. Je mange trop, I eat too much. So it's just too much sadness for her to really comprehend. And she talks about that it has been 6 years since she's been entered into this facility. And her friend says, oui, mais elle s'est fait interner volontairement, n'est-ce pas? So we can see a couple of elements of what we're going to be talking about in this part of the chapter here. First of all, we see this phrase, n'est-ce pas? And we can use that, learn that as a chunk. So you might want to try and repeat after me, n'est-ce pas? N'est-ce pas? And it just means, isn't it so? Or isn't that right? So it's something that we can tack on to the end of a question to sort of make it an involuntary response if we think we already know the answer. Here, when we see her say volontairement, this is an example of an adjective in French, and it's a fairly common one. You can see here what we're going to learn about adverbs is that it ends in ment, and that's how we usually form adverbs in French, is by adding ment, taking the feminine form of the adjective and then adding those letters there can make it into an adverb. And we have that same situation in English. A lot of times we can just add ly onto an adjective. So, for example, rapid and then rapidly, we can do that in English as well. So it's almost just like English in that sense.
Elle peut sortir quand elle veut. Oui, mais c'est pas si facile. Elle souffre toujours des... Bonjour, Robert. Bonjour. On arrive.
And so we saw there that Claire was using. I'm going to back it up here just a little bit.
Bonjour, Robert.
Where she says,
Oui, mais elle s'est fait interner volontairement, n'est-ce pas? Donc, elle peut sortir quand elle veut. Oui, mais c'est pas si facile. Elle souffre toujours des...
so she says, elle souffre, she suffers toujours. Toujours, always. And that's one of our adverbs of frequency that we see here on page 48, the very first one in the list. Toujours. And the example that they give you is Anne travaille toujours. She always works. So that's one of our adverbs of frequency there. So she always suffers, or she's in a continual state of suffering. And she pauses a moment before she says about that.
Bonjour, Robert. Bonjour. On arrive. Viens. Il est presque 15 heures. Il faut travailler, ça va te changer les idées.
So her friend is trying to help her to get on into work, and il faut travailler, it is necessary to work. Travailler was one of our vocabulary words. Et ça te fait changer les idées. We can see the words changer and idée, so that's going to help you change your ideas or change what you're dwelling on.
Oui, madame, je comprends. Vous pouvez passer à la réception pour venir chercher votre clé. Merci.
So again, here, if we remember from last week, she's obviously working as a receptionist at a hotel, a very nice hotel.
Bonjour, madame. Je peux vous aider? Bonjour. Je m'appelle Madame Saxton. J'ai un problem.
So again, as we talked about last week, we see that word aider when Claire speaks to her, and we can kind of imagine in that context of being at a receptionist desk, obviously she's going to ask her, hello, may I help you? So aider, the word aid, kind of makes sense that that is the verb to help. And so this woman, as we can tell from her accent, may not be French, and she gives her name as Madame Saxton, and she says she has un problème. J'ai un problème. So that's a good cognate for us. Un problème.
Parlez-vous anglais? Oui, yes. I'm Mrs. Saxton from the presidential suite. Ah, yeah? I have a teensy problem. I seem to have lost my husband. He was here with me a moment ago, and he just slipped away. Have you seen him? I'm sorry, madam. I don't know your husband. What does he look like? Well, let's see. He's this tall. Well, maybe a little taller. Maybe not that tall. I guess he's just average. He is bald, though. I mean, not bald, but I think, see, his hair is like, let's see, like that man there, talking to that young woman. Wait, that is my husband. Charles! Excuse me. What are you doing? Why are you talking to that Girl Scout? Oui, monsieur.
This is a package with her name on it. All of this you should remember from last week because it's the same video.
Oui, monsieur. Je peux vous aider?
So here again, we see this verb aider, and in the context, je peux vous aider, can I help you? So the verb to help.
Oui, merci, mademoiselle. Vous êtes Claire?
Pardon?
Claire, c'est votre prénom, n'est-ce pas?
Again, the use of the phrase n'est-ce pas, because he is assured already that her first name is Claire, and so he's asking her, vous êtes Claire? And she says, pardon, or come again, I'm sorry. And he says, Claire, c'est votre prénom, n'est-ce pas? That's your first name, isn't it? So it's kind of a thing that we can put on the end of a sentence if we're fairly sure of what the answer is going to be.
Oui, je m'appelle Claire. Claire Gagné.
Enchanté, Claire Gagné.
Enchantée.
C'est joli.
Pardon?
Votre prénom, c'est un joli prénom, Claire.
Merci. Vous êtes client à l'hôtel, monsieur?
Oui, excusez-moi, mademoiselle. Je m'appelle Alexis Prévost. Il y a un problème?
Non, non, monsieur Prévost. Puis-je faire quelque chose pour vous aider?
So again, just another way that she's asking, can I do something to help you, instead of can I help you? So this verb would mean can I, and then do something to help you.
Oui, ce ne sera pas long. J'ai oublié ma brosse à dents chez moi.
So here, if we know that don't means teeth, we talked about this last weekend, but j'ai oublié ma brosse à dents chez moi, so he's forgotten his toothbrush at his house.
Voilà.
Merci, mademoiselle.
Je vous en prie, monsieur Prévost. Autre chose?
Non, c'est tout. Encore merci.
Qu'est-ce qu'il y a? Rien. Je viens d'aider un homme très sympathique et très beau.
So here we can see, as we get into our irregular adjectives, it's important to remember what adjectives really do in French and in English, that they describe the person or thing that they're talking about. And we have here one sympathique and another one beau, meaning handsome. And so we also see here another adverb, très, because it's modifying this adjective here, sympathique and très beau. So that's one form of an adverb, is it's a word that modifies an adjective as well. Okay, so that's your guided viewing of the video for part 2 of chapter 1. Again, that's the same video, but we were focusing more on the grammar points for part 2 of the chapter.